In the beginning, there was man. Then man made the machine in his own likeness. Thus did man become the architect of his own demise.
Largely believed to be a cheap tie-in to the then-popular movie franchise The Matrix, the Animatrix is a series of 8 unlinked short stories that take place in the Matrix universe. It's largely known that the original Matrix movie was heavily inspired by animated works like Ghost in the Shell and Akira, so it seems fitting that the Wachowski brothers went ahead and got a group of Japanese directors together to bring a whole new look to their Matrix universe. I have to admit, when I first sat down to watch this, my expectations were pretty low. Sure, I enjoyed The Matrix, and this was around the time between the second and third movies, before everything arguably went to shit. But the idea of having random stories thrown together just seemed like a money grab to me, and in a way I was not wrong. The Animatrix was brought into creation along with the video game Enter the Matrix to expand upon the already existing universe, but without using a full theatrical film. And it is this reason that many people seem to avoid the title altogether, except for hardcore Matrix fans. And that, at first glance, makes sense, but when you actually watch it? Like, damn, maybe saying Japanese directors wasn't enough to pique your attention. Let me dish out some names here. We got the director of Bebop, the director of Genketsuo, Count of Monte Cristo, creator and director of Ninja Scroll. Like, really all you're missing is the boys down at Production IG, and you got yourself a full house of talent here. If you walk into this expecting a full-length feature film that tells a complete and understanding story, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Hell, some parts make absolutely no sense. But if you just want to sit down, throw on some scholarly glasses while having tea and crumpets, I suppose this is a good candidate. Now, since the Animatrix consists of 9 different stories, all done with different styles of animation, I'm going to be covering each one and giving my thoughts. Since they are short, I warn you that spoilers are potentially unavoidable, but here we go. We start off with the final flight of the Osiris, and the story is basically the human hovercraft Osiris, after detecting a large group of machine sentinels, uncovers a massive machine army that is beginning to drill into what remains of Earth's soil towards the last human city of Zion, which is underground. After being discovered by the machines, the Osiris makes a desperate attempt to flee while hacking into the Matrix to send a warning to Zion. Oh yeah, and there's a strip sparring session with katanas. Animated in 3D by the same guys who created the financial flop that is Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, all I could say is that 7 years since its release, it has not aged well. For its time, back in 2003, the CG effects were groundbreaking, and I'll admit I was on the praise bandwagon with it for a while. It raised the bar on what CG animation could do with digitally created characters that actually looked alive. Nowadays, though, we have gotten used to such designs and such emotion, especially if you have any interest in the popular video gaming world at all. But at the very least, if nothing else, Osiris fills in the blanks between The Matrix and its sequel, The Matrix Reloaded, and for what it's worth, is a spectacle.
You know, I peaked.
So did I.
The next 2 parts, split up for some unknown reason, are the Second Renaissance, parts 1 and 2, chronicling the rise of the machines and the downfall and enslavement of the human race into the batteries that they become. If you were to forget everything you know about the Matrix, these parts actually tell an interesting tale on the future of mankind, as well as humanity's reaction to the evolution of their creations, and it reminds me heavily of iRobot in that regard. This was the part that was done by Genketsuo's director, who wrote the stories based on bits and pieces from what he got from the Wachowski brothers and weaved them together into one solid narrative. The difference between this and Osiris is that it's all exposition, like a documentary, rather than a film about characters. If it fails in any regard, it's that this particular style makes the rewatch value very low. If you've seen it once, there really isn't a reason to go back. However, to watch it at least once is something that it deserves.
In the beginning, there was man, and for a time, it was good.
Next up is Kid's Story, directed by Bebop's own Watanabe. Remember that kid in Reloaded that randomly appeared saying Neo saved him and kept showing up later on for no damn good reason? Well, this story explains all of that and fills in the gaps. Much like how Neo was before he met Trinity in the original movie, Kid lives in the Matrix and starts to question why his dreams feel more real than reality. And before long, he's getting thrown into a headlong chase from agents around his school, and falls several stories into the ground below, somehow releasing himself from the Matrix without the use of the gooey mirror. If there's one thing worth noting is the drastic change in conventional animation in comparison to the previous parts. With Osiris, we saw the CGI that today has become commonplace, and with Renaissance, we saw animation that has the standard Gonzo feel about it, but Kid's Story is all over the frackin' place. I honestly don't believe there are many keyframes in this at all, and the ones that are there are few and far between. Normally, if this was anything else, I would just call bad animating, but this is something different. It's a very different style, and I think that's what they were going for. Something unique, and it certainly is that. All that being said, though, I'm not completely sold on the animation, but then again, I'm not the type of person that puts a black box on white caravans and tries to sell it to major art galleries either. Next, from the creator of Ninja Scroll comes the segment Program, and it sure does look like it. All the way to the art style and setting, it just screams something like Ninja Scroll or Basilisk even. But you get what you pay for, and for what it is, it delivers. What starts off as a simple sparring match between two friends in feudal Japan quickly becomes a life-or-death battle for Sis, as she is confronted by her friend Dao, who has become fed up with the truth, and wishes to return to the simple life within the Matrix, and has even gone so far as killing the crew of their ship to return there. The animation in this segment changes in style as it goes on, starting off looking like a Japanese scroll painting before ever so slowly changing into a computer-generated world. The short shows how far the human resistance will go to save themselves from the machine, even if it does not add to the overall story of the Matrix universe, and from its backgrounds to swordplay, it shows it well.
Relax. You're okay.
Only the most exceptional people become aware of the Matrix. Those that learn it exists must possess a rare degree of intuition, sensitivity, and a questioning nature.
Moving on, we have World Record, and I have to admit that it's one of the ones that I personally like less than the others. It's about a man who I believe is an Olympic sprinter who tries to beat the world record for something or other. I would assume that it's for the 100-meter dash, but they never specify. The point of the segment is that given the right circumstances, a person can break through the Matrix to see reality for what it really is. But it's really one of those blink and you miss it type storylines that is usually grasped through repeated watching. It has its charms and its own unique animation style like the rest, but out of all the segments suffers the most from lack of running time. Though the Matrix was never big on explaining everything to the audience anyway, preferring to let them decide for themselves about what everything is about before declaring that since they can't figure it out, it must be a masterpiece. And I might instantly be called a hypocrite for this next one, because the segment Beyond I think is really damn good, even though it does the exact same thing in terms of explaining what the hell is going on. Following the explanation of déjà vu from the original Matrix, Beyond shows that even in the Matrix, reality can break down. And in this case, it's a haunted house over in Japan. The house was discovered by a group of young kids and a teenage girl searching for her lost cat. In this house, bottles break against the ground only to reassemble themselves after rebounding, rain pours in through a single hole in the roof, gravity doesn't always apply, and there's a door that leads nowhere. The segment's charm is the spectacle of it all, discovering all sorts of magnificent things that don't occur anywhere else, and it's very childlike in that respect. But as a child who is having fun and gets called away by their parents, so do the agents of the Matrix descend upon the haunted house and evacuate the children before completely reformatting the area. In comparing Beyond to World Record, this one is much easier to understand in terms of the plot. There's no big or exponential mindfuckery with someone somehow getting out of the Matrix happening here. It's just a bunch of kids that found this magical place in the middle of their city, and weird shit happens there. There's not that much more you can explain. What's funny about this one is that it was directed by Koji Morimoto, the same guy who did Akira, so you would think that it would be the most unexplainable out of all of them and the most LOL deep. But oh no, they saved that to the end. I'm gonna skip over the second to last segment and head straight for the finish line for this one. The segment Matriculated is a perfect example of just how LOL deep the Matrix tries to get. From what I can understand, it follows a group of humans who travel the surface of the Earth, capturing sentinels and other machines, and then try to convert them to the human cause. It's one of those things that sound great on paper, but when I actually sat down and watched the sequences where they were trying to convert a machine, I truly believe that someone must have been on acid or something, because this thing is a CG kaleidoscope. But okay, let's say that it's just the style of it. Let's forget the trippy animation for a moment, and let's sit down, be all scholarly, and try to take this segment seriously. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Matriculated was brought to life by the same guys who made Aeon Flux. Now, I've never seen Aeon Flux, but I have to admit that I'm less inclined to now than before I watched this. Maybe it's the art, maybe it's the Looney Tune-esque thing amidst the sea of WTF BBQ, but I have to admit that Matriculated seems the weakest of all the segments to me, even below World Record. And finally, we come to the second to last segment, a detective story. I like this one. I really, really do. I like the old noir film type story about a down-and-out detective. Not that there's many other kinds of noir stories, but you get the point. Here we follow Private Eye Mr. Ash as he's hired by the agents to track down the elusive hacker Trinity, led on by riddles referencing Alice in Wonderland, but that's par for the course. One may ask why the agents can't just track Trinity down themselves, and I assume the reason why agents hire a guy like Ash to find Trinity is because they can't think as intuitively as humans can. And it's kind of funny when you think of it that way, because the only way that the agents can catch Trinity is by sending people after her that are more likely to join her and get freed from the Matrix rather than help take her down. Also, I haven't heard anyone else make this connection, but a detective story reminds me very much of Blade Runner, in that it's a detective noir in a cyberpunk-ish setting. Even in Ash's narration of the events, it's reminiscent of the theatrical cut for Blade Runner. Oh yeah, it was also directed by Watanabe of Bebop. Quite a different piece than the other one he did, Kid's Story, but in a good way. Overall, at the end of the day, if you really aren't a fan of the Matrix movies, the Animatrix is not going to give you an epiphany and make you change your mind. As a set of stories, the compilation presents itself well, but individually, it suffers mostly from lack of running time. I think it's meant to be something watched for the spectacle of it all, rather than something to be taken completely and utterly seriously. I know what with Halo Legends and Batman Gotham Knight, this whole animated segments thrown into a DVD is very slowing occurring elsewhere. But I think this kind of thing could really benefit from something like the indie market, or something outside of a popular intellectual property like Master Chief or Batman. Get a bunch of artists, then give them all a general theme or topic, and have them wreak havoc with their imaginations. There's a lot of potential here in this type of storytelling. But getting back to the topic at hand, the verdict for Animatrix is thus. If you at all like The Matrix, even just the first one, you should get around to watching this if you haven't, even if it's just to see Beyond and Detective Story. I've seen the DVDs lying around in bargain bins for the last few years, and those two segments alone are worth at least that much. But if you weren't a fan of The Matrix at all, and you think it should just fade away into cyberpunk obscurity, give Animatrix a pass. Overall, I give Animatrix a rental recommendation, and that's it for me. See you next time, and stay frosty.
A case to end all cases.
Holy crap, was that Titus from FF10?